unoccupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, patriots and preppers, and of course, members of the Mack Pack. I am Mack Worley III, and this is On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. The date is August 10th, 2014, and we have a really good show in store for you today. Today about 5:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's about 8:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be joined by special guest and host of the show, the Blue Republican. His name is Robert Corner. So Robin Corner is a British permanent resident of the United States. He's a political and economic commentator for the Huffington Post and the Daily Paul. He's also the moderate voice. He's also on the Moderate Voice and other sites as well. He's best known for coining the term the Blue Republican, which refers to liberty-loving liberals and independents who joined the GOP in 2011 and 2012 to support Ron Paul's bid for the presidency, something he strongly urged them to do. So stay tuned for that. You do not want to miss this interview with him. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics as well, so feel free to, give us your 2 cents on these. We're going to be talking about Facebook's changes that now force its mobile users to download Facebook Messenger, and we're going to discuss the security concerns surrounding that program. We're also going to be talking about Jonathan Alter's article on thedailybeast.com, where he makes the case that the United States needs corporate loyalty oaths, and we're going to talk about that in great detail later in this episode. Also, if we have time, we're also going to talk about the New Jersey cop who was caught on camera saying that since Obama doesn't follow the Constitution, that the police don't have to either. So any topics that you guys would like to discuss is also on the table. Whatever you would like, feel free to give us a call. If you'd like to join the conversation today, the phone number to the show is 619-924-0986. The Mack Pack phone lines are open, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com, and we'll be taking your calls and reading your emails during the show. Don't forget to check us out at onthemoveshow.com. That's our website. Here at blogtalkradio.com/onthemoveshow. You can follow us on here to make sure you stay up to date on all of our episodes. You can also like us at facebook.com/onthemoveshow. We have a YouTube channel, lots of original content on there. Feel free to subscribe, youtube.com/onthemoveshow. And you can, of course, follow us on twitter.com/onthemoveshow. And, I figured I would play an interview for you all. On July 11th, I was interviewed on the Lars Larson Show. He's a local and nationally syndicated broadcaster out here in the Pacific Northwest. So I figured I'd play the interview for you. I was interviewed on his show about my open carry case, and here it is.
On the phone with me right now is Mack Worley. Mack, welcome to the program. You called in on First Amendment Friday. A lot of people have emailed to find out whatever happened to you, because about a year ago, you were in some big trouble with the cops, weren't you?
Yes, sir, Lars. And by the way, thank you for letting me on the show.
You bet.
Basically, I've been going through the court process of this. But let me
well, before you get to this, tell everybody how you ended up in trouble with the cops.
Yes, sir. So I was legally open carrying a rifle in Vancouver, Washington, and I was unlawfully arrested for trespassing on a public sidewalk by the Vancouver Police Department. I was off private property. I was standing on a public sidewalk, and I have video of that. If your listeners would like to check it out, it's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/onthemoveshow.
Yeah.
And the video clearly shows that I'm standing on a public sidewalk. And anyway, after I was arrested, I was then later charged with displaying a weapon. The trespassing charge never actually made it to court. It was dismissed because they didn't have a case for it.
Got it.
And with that, I've just recently been found guilty of displaying a weapon in Vancouver, even though...
But you were displaying a weapon.
Well, the law says you display a weapon in a manner that warrants alarm for the safety of others. And that law has been narrowed due to its vagueness.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And I agree with the concerns about that law being used too broadly, because somebody could say, gee, I caught a glimpse of Lars' concealed carry pistol. It scared me to death, so I called the cops. I think we all worry about running afoul of that. But when you went to court, what happened?
So a jury of my peers found me guilty of displaying a weapon in a time, a place, in a manner, and under circumstance that warrants alarm for the safety of others. Now, the key word there is manner. That implies mannerisms, conduct. And during my trial, every single witness testified that I didn't touch my weapon. I wasn't threatening anyone. I wasn't doing any conduct that was threatening at all. And one jury instruction that they had specifically was that the mere open carrying of a rifle in public, of a semi-automatic rifle in public, is not illegal. So even though that's not illegal, I was still found guilty. So right now we're going through the appeal process, and we're going to keep fighting this. But anybody that would like to check out the videos are more than welcome to. Again, that's youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow. It's on my YouTube channel there. So
you're appealing it to the Washington Court of Appeals at this point, or are you taking it federal?
It's going to the Superior Court next, I believe.
Okay.
And from there, we're guaranteed at least two appeals. You got the Superior Court and then the Appellate Court, and then after that, it could go up to the Washington State Supreme Court if they choose to.
Mack, how much have you spent on this so far? How much does it cost you?
Well, right now I'm in debt about $5,000 on it, but appeals, from what I understand, cost a lot of money, and the bills are piling up. I just got a big fine from being found guilty on this.
How much is the fine?
$421.
So, Mack, real quick before I run out of time, why were you doing it that day? Say it quickly, and was it a smart thing to do?
Well, the reason why I was out there was to talk to people about gun rights, and I was also making a video for my YouTube channel to show people how to legally and lawfully carry in Washington. As far as whether or not it's a smart thing to do, that's really, it's a smart thing for me to assert my rights. So, I personally think it is. I would do it again in a heartbeat, but I just am really upset at the way that my rights were violated, and I feel like if they can do this to me, they can do this to anybody. If they can arrest you for standing on a public sidewalk for trespassing, then they can arrest you for anything.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it's the best way to persuade people, but Mack, what you were doing I think was perfectly legal, and I think they made an issue of it because guns are a hot topic right now, and that's not right. You got the Lars Larson Show.
All right, so that was my interview on Lars Larson. Again, that was on July 11th, so that was a little bit ago, but anyway, I figured I'd play it for you guys so you can hear it for yourselves. Anyway, we are moving on. We're moving into the first segment of today, and we like to call it This Day in History.
This Day in History.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Yesterday, what our country can do for you.
Mr. Gorbachev teared down this wall.
And the people who knock these buildings down.
A date which will live in infamy.
We shall fight in the field and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
All right, according to Yahoo News, on this day in history, that's August 10th in history, in 1792, during the French Revolution, mobs in Paris attacked the Tuileries Palace, where King Louis XVI resided. Let me see here, 1 second. Okay, the king was later arrested, and he was put on trial for treason and executed. In 1821, Missouri became the 24th state to enter the Union. In 1846, President James K. Polk signed a measure establishing the Smithsonian Institute, and that's something I want to talk about. Obviously, every country has national treasures, and I find it pretty interesting that we've created the Smithsonian Institute to actually house our national treasures. And it's not even just our stuff; it's global treasures as well. And one interesting story I have in regards to treasures, especially spoils of war. I was stationed at the F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and there is a bell, I believe, that was captured in the Philippines, and we had that on display in F.E. Warren, and it may have actually been a cannon, now that I think about it. I can't quite remember. But anyway, the Filipino government, they continue to send us letters every year asking for it back, and we captured this during World War II. And anyway, long story short, we always say no, that we're not going to give it back to them. So I find it as a kind of an interesting story, a little bit of history that I've saw, and I'm a big history buff, history nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I kind of dove into a lot of the history that was at this base at F.E. Warren, because it was part of the westward expansion. There's a lot of stuff in regards to how the city of Cheyenne grew with the base, and the base was established to protect the railroad. So anyway, I know that's kind of off topic here. In 1874, Herbert Clark Hoover, the 31st president of the United States, was born in West Branch, Iowa. In 1913, the Treaty of Bucharest was signed, ending the Second Balkan War. In 1921, Franklin D. Roosevelt was stricken with polio at his summer home on the Canadian island of Campobello. So, one thing I would like to discuss too here is Franklin D. Roosevelt, his bout with polio. He actually made quite a bit of attempts to hide his illness, his disease, from the American people. There were a lot of attempts to prevent the media from filming him when in the wheelchair. He had secret ramps that were built to get him up stairways so that he could have these media briefings and stuff, and the media was discouraged from reporting on that, things like that. I find this very interesting that back in 1921, FDR was very concerned about the public image, the optics, so to speak, of what it would look like with a president in a wheelchair and how that may make the country look weak. I think nowadays we are in a different time where we could have a president who's in a wheelchair and publicly be seen in a wheelchair and not look weak on the world stage, depending on how that politician, that president would react. I think the stigma behind that is not as bad as it was back in 1921. At least that's my thoughts anyway. In 1949, the National Military Establishment was renamed the Department of Defense. And I find this interesting as well. I had no idea about this, that the DOD was actually the National Military Establishment. I'm going to do a little bit more looking up on the history of this, but I think that name in and of itself is kind of interesting, the National Military Establishment. Anyway, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed a measure providing $20,000 payments to still living Japanese Americans who'd been interned by their government during World War II. This is something that I feel is one of the darkest parts of our history. We have seen throughout America's history that we've had some pretty egregious things that we've done to people, and this is up there in my opinion. We interned Japanese American citizens during World War II, people that weren't committing any crimes, people that were simply just American citizens, and they had a Japanese heritage behind it. But this is how distrustful our government was of Japan. They were concerned of infiltrators, so to speak. So this still is not an excuse. This is a deplorable reaction that our government did. And I don't know in 1988 what $20,000 payments would mean to somebody, but nowadays I would be insulted by $20,000 after having been interned in a government camp. That's just my opinion. And our last mention here in this day in history is in 1993, Ruth Bader Ginsburg swore in as a second female justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. Anyway, we are moving on. If you would like to join today's conversation, give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And anyway, at this point, we're going to cut to our first commercial break of the day. And when we get back, we'll be joined by our guest, Robin Corner from the Blue Republican. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. All right, at this point, we're going to bring on our guest on the show. His name is Robin Corner. Are you there, Robin?
I am. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing very well. First of all, I just want to thank you for joining us on the show today. And I want to dive right in here and talk about your program that you guys have going on over there, the Blue Republican. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to what your program is about?
Okay, well, it started about 3 years ago. I wrote an article on the Huffington Post. I write on the Huffington Post, and I wrote an article entitled, "If You Love Peace, Become a Blue Republican Just for a Year." And it was targeted at, my friends on the left, because the Huffington Post is a pretty lefty, outlet. And I was speaking to those that thought they had voted for Obama the first time round because they don't like crony corporatism, they don't like unnecessary war, and they do like civil rights. All those things that, if you remember, the left were complaining to Bush, were complaining about under Bush, right? Mm-hmm. So, and in this article I said, look, if that was why you voted for Obama in 2008, now you've seen everything he's done in his first term, stick with your principles and vote for the only guy in the race that has a track record on those principles. And he happens to be an old white conservative Republican called Ron Paul. And in that article, I coined this term Blue Republican to, describe those who came from the left, maybe were independent or Democrats, who were going to join the GOP, perhaps just for 1 year, to try and get Ron Paul on a ticket, based on their principles. And so thanks to a number of people who read that article at the time, Israel Anderson, Zach Carter, and many others, it became, it kind of really touched people's imaginations, and it grew, and I did a lot of radio and a few TV interviews and so on and so forth, and it got a lot of media attention, and indeed I was on the phone to, the Ron Paul campaign, and it really grew. So what then happened, of course, Ron Paul gets denied his nomination, but this meme, this idea of Blue Republican, and the broader idea of putting in the language of the left, of progressives, of disillusioned Americans who have been caught up in the left-right paradigm, putting in a language that they can understand the ideas of liberty and the founding principles that are kind of enshrined in the Constitution. So it's so we're kind of promoting those ideas in an atypical language with a view to actually moving the dial of mainstream politics towards liberty in the Constitution. And so now, 3 years later, there are state chapters of Blue Republican just springing up all over the country. We're just beginning, but there's the ones in, for example, Colorado, Minnesota, Missouri are particularly active, and there are others. And I'm always looking for volunteers to basically take this flavor of liberty, this way of presenting liberty, this common ground-seeking, non-dogmatic way of understanding those who aren't already convinced by our principles, understanding them enough so that we can put our principles in a way that they're going to understand. It's actually going to be convincing. It's not going to put them off. Libertarians have been putting people off for 40 years, right? We need to get more traction. So that is what Blue Republican is about. It's about being true, obviously, to the philosophy, the principles of the Constitution, but obviously an awareness that we need to be good at sales and marketing as a movement.
Yes, sir. And so where can people find your show, and when do you guys broadcast?
So the show, Blue Republican Radio with Robin Kerner, that's something I started just 6 months ago. The archive is on Daily Pool Radio. That's where the show started, dailypoolradio.com. You can go to On Demand, look up Blue Republican Radio, and you'll see the archives of my shows. But we're now moving over, and the move should be complete in a few weeks, to truthbetoldmedia.com. And if you just check the shows and the hosts, you will find me there. My name's Robin Kerner, and the show is Blue Republican with Robin Kerner. Again, on truthbetoldmedia.com.
Awesome. So for any of my listeners out there, feel free to check out his show. I've listened to a few of your episodes, and actually the original, the first time that I heard about you was when you were on the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. So I was interested in what you were saying, and then I ended up checking out your show. I listened to the show from that when you had Cindy Biondi Gobrecht on there. And, I really enjoy your views. And then I was lucky enough to attend the Libertarian Party convention that was held in Seattle, and you were a keynote speaker. You replaced, I believe it was Judge Gray. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
And I really liked what you had to say. In fact, I posted a video that you from the speech that you had. Actually, 2 videos from there. And in fact, if you don't mind, Robin, I'll go ahead and play just a quick clip of your speech there, and I give some of the audience a taste of what you had to say. Okay?
Sure. Thanks.
No problem. Here it is.
Welcome to On the Move.
People don't have to agree. People don't have to agree with the specifics. They can connect on the general deep truths, on what is self-evident, and that is the appeal that we make. Crony corporatism, civil rights. If people are complaining about it, it's because they haven't seen someone come along to represent it back to them, to reflect back to them their concerns and to validate those concerns. Well, as we've seen in the UK, 27.5% from a party that didn't exist 20 years ago. First time in over 100 years to beat out. Imagine that. But imagine Libertarian Party beating out the Democrats and the Republicans. It can't be done. It can't be done. Of course it can be done. Just stay strong. I'm just so excited. And I'm seeing the maturing of this movement. It's in the demographic, the cross-section. It's in the way you're dressing. It's in the way you're talking. Remember, the people who support you need the American people, of whom you are a very important part, because you are going to lead the snap-back to liberty. They're the same people as we had in 1014, 1100, 1255, 1776. They have the same concerns. Appeal to what is basic. Appeal to what is basic, what is true, because the rights of the individual are what is most basic and most true. And we're going to do great things. And we will get another 1,000 years. Let's get to work. Thanks very much.
So that was you at the Libertarian Party of Washington's convention in Seattle, and I really the stuff that you said really resonated with me. And in fact, the convention itself was a real eye opener for me. I've always been real reluctant to affiliate myself with any party in particular, but after that convention, I became inspired. I really did want to be a libertarian, a big L libertarian, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the likelihood of the Libertarian Party growing and going mainstream.
Oh well, that's short question with a very long and complicated answer, I think, because there's so many pieces to it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to, this is going to sound banal, but it does come down to the strength of vision of those that are really directing and kind of putting energy into the effort. Now, so the first thing to say is, you know, I know personally some of these new big L libertarians, the younger generation, you might say, and, you know, they're very well equipped in terms of vision and energy to make this change. There are, of course, so many institutionalized legal reasons, obstacles to their success. It's going to be really tough. And it isn't clear to me that we're going to be able to say, you know, that a third party, that the actions of a third party in this system, this duopolistic system that's stacked against the third party, will alone be responsible for this snap back to liberty that I was talking about. But it's clear to me, as more people like, you know, Michael Pickens, that arranged that event and is the chairman of the Libertarian Party up here in Washington State, where you saw me at that event, as more people like him come into the Libertarian Party, capital L, it's obvious that the LP is going to be an important part of the mainstreaming of these ideas. I mean, I do think this is happening in a broader zeitgeist. And this is something, obviously, that Blue Republican is a part of, that Ron Paul was a huge part of. That I think the very fact that Rand Paul has the views that he has, and at the same time is taken seriously in the mainstream as a Republican contender for the presidency, arguably right now the best contender for, you know, as a GOP nominee for the presidency. This goes to show that things are changing. Now, the LP is one set of hands on deck. It's going to be an important set of hands. And I think, you know, and I think they are right to believe that they are going to make a big difference to this. And the more they believe it, the more it will be true. And then the more that it becomes true, nothing succeeds like success, and more people will flock. So I'm optimistic. I am optimistic.
Absolutely, and it becomes basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you believe in yourself and you think that you can be successful, you ultimately could be successful. You know, that those who do something that, you know, they go into and they believe that there's no chance that they can ever succeed, they're not going to be successful. So the key, obviously, is to believe that you can do something. I believe it was Steve Jobs who said, those people that are crazy enough to believe that they can change the world are the ones that actually do. And he was right.
Yes.
So
I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said, the reasonable man changes himself to the world, to suit the world. The unreasonable man insists on changing the world to suit himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man.
Absolutely. And, you know, everybody who was an innovator in our society or in the world was somebody who did not conform and thought outside the box. You know, I've had several conversations recently that, you know, we don't need to look at things like we did in the past. You know, when people tell you it can't be done this way, we live in the 21st century. Anything can be done. If you have the drive and you're willing to work hard enough, you can do things in the most unconventional ways now. You can, you know, film your own movie without production money. You can, you know, start your own podcast or radio show and have a big following. You can become an entrepreneur and start your own website selling goods. I mean, these are things that you don't need to do things in the historic ways that we've always done. Outside of the box thinkers are the people who are going to innovate us and take us to the next level. I want to talk to you a little bit about the GOP and specifically the libertarian candidate, you know, oriented candidates that are in there, such as Rand Paul. What are your thoughts on Rand?
I have to be careful because obviously, you know, I'm identified with a movement that officially endorsed his father and then ended up endorsing Gary Johnson. And we will be endorsing other candidates. And I think, you know, so I want to, you know, there's no official endorsement that I've come out with yet for, you know, certainly for the 2016 cycle. That said, I am liking Rand Paul more and more. Purism, political purism, well, really it's a contradiction in terms, but the people that seem to object most to him are those that say, you know, because he's not libertarian enough on ABC specifics, then we should kind of, yeah, as libertarians, he's a neocon or he's, you know, whatever it is, right? this is completely to misunderstand how politics works and how and how history moves. What's important about Rand Paul and why he's most exciting is he is getting the message into the mainstream, right? And not only is he talking about, for example, the GOP winning on the West Coast and the Northeast, and recognizing that it's going to have to be more libertarian, it's going to have a hope, which is true. He's actually doing it, and he's doing it in a way that isn't making everybody roll their eyes and marginalize him as some kind of a kook. So this is more success in a way than the purists have had for 2 generations. Obviously, the time is ripe now, but Rand is out there, making the best, or I think, as he sees it, of the situation. I don't think there's any candidate who's ever a panacea. I certainly didn't agree with Ron Paul on everything, and anybody can read my extensive archive that was built up from 2011 to see exactly what my positions are. But I supported him fervently. Purism isn't the same as principles. I think that I suspect that Rand Paul is a man of principle. I think he's a man who's probably passionate about most of the liberty canon. And I think, given the constraints he's under, most of which, by the way, we as the public don't see, because we're not up there in Capitol Hill dealing with the shenanigans that he is in among. I'm just like, I wish him well. So far, I wish him well. And I would really like, I'll be honest, I would really like him to pick up the phone and say, okay, Rodman, these blue Republicans, how are you set up in the blue states? Can you actually help us in this effort to move the GOP in the direction of liberty? Because, I support the Libertarian Party. I support anybody in the GOP who cares about liberty. I support people who care about liberty who, on principle, won't even be involved in party politics. I don't care about the label. If you're moving the country toward liberty, it may not be to the exact destination that I want or some other purist libertarians want, but if you're moving the country in that direction more than in the opposite direction, then we need to unite around supporting you. And I think, again, history teaches us at times of increasing tyranny, it is not ideological purism that causes this snap back to liberty that I was talking about in that clip that you played. It's harnessing the sense of offended justice, the offended sense of justice of the average person, that person who feels that the liberties I had yesterday, I'm not going to have tomorrow. And usually that is not done through trying to train an entire nation in a political orthodoxy, a libertarian dogma. That's not how it's going to be. So for all of those reasons, I am really glad that Rand Paul is in there, not only fighting, but what he's doing is through the media. He's harnessing the media well, so his message is being multiplied up. And that's what's important. He's normalizing these ideas in a culture, in some areas, in ways that even his dad didn't. So, that's important.
So I would like to ask you a question really fast. Would you say that endorsement of political candidates is important? It's important to look at what people endorse, what candidates they endorse, and do you think that that's an important part of politics and who we should decide to vote for and support?
Well, it depends, I guess, what you mean by important. One of the reasons I am really excited about the Blue Republican chapter starting up is because I feel that people see my work as authentic. They know where I'm coming from. They know that I seek common ground. They know, nevertheless, that I'm very strong on constitutional and liberty principles. But I don't know the politicians who are in races all over the country, so I can't bring to bear any credibility I have to support them. Now, if I have a brand that chapters in different states can bring to support certain candidates through endorsements, and they are good candidates, then I certainly hope that will do good. And I certainly want to be trying it in the 2014 and the 2016 cycle. I mean, I'm actually talking to chairmen and chairwomen of Blue Republican chapters actually about endorsing candidates in their states, in their districts. And recently we released, kind of within the organization, a candidate endorsement questionnaire. So this is something that I'm actually involved in. I will be empirical about it. If it turns out that it isn't valuable, then we won't invest any more energy in it. But back in 2011, 2012, I did endorse candidates, not just Ron Paul, but a few others. And it seemed to be surprisingly important to them because I have a national platform. And if you are a candidate in a particular district in a particular state and you can point to good, solid coverage on a national scale, it gives you credibility where you are locally, you know what I mean, in your own community, among your own constituents. So if I can, in that small way, help good liberty constitutional candidates, then I want to do it. And we'll see, the feedback I got the first time around a couple of years ago was that it was valuable. And I think I'm getting the same feedback now. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, but one thing I kind of want to point out here, and I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here. So obviously,
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say about the Romney endorsement?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. As far as endorsements, are concerned, obviously they are important to you because you're reluctant to immediately come out and endorse Rand Paul. So let's flip that and look at the brand of Rand Paul. And would you say that his endorsements are something that we should take some stock in regards to his positions? He comes out, for example, I support him when it comes to, his stand against NSA surveillance and things like that. On the issues of liberty, he tends to be on the right side. But in regards to who he endorses, do you think that that's something that we should be paying attention to? Do you think we should take that into account when we're looking at supporting this candidate, who he actually endorses for other offices?
Okay, so I would say yes, but only in a sophisticated way, right? So let's talk about the Romney endorsement because this is a good answer, right? Let's use it as an example. When Rand endorsed Romney, I felt physically sick for a day. I mean, it physically hurt me. However, I do not now hold that against him for this reason. When he ran for Senate, the deal was that he would get the GOP support so that he could win if he promised to endorse the candidate, the presidential nominee, whoever it was. He made that deal. So what Rand did was he kept his word. Now, what did he get, therefore, by keeping his word and doing that sickening thing of endorsing Romney? Sickening from my point of view. He got the platform that has enabled everything he has done since. Now, we might say, well, he didn't have to, but then we're just indulging in kind of hypotheticals. The fact is, he made the decision for a reason, and the result he wanted, he got. So that endorsement, when seen in its full context, has moved the dial toward liberty. Without a doubt. Did it make me sick? Absolutely. So what I would say is, yes, it matters how he endorses, but recognize that some of the endorsements will be out of pure agreement of principle, and some of them will be out of methodological or strategic need. And as a politician, we should want him to be looking to both.
So in your reference to him being a man of principle, though, how do you justify a man of principle endorsing the likes of Mitch McConnell, who is arguably the antithesis of the libertarian movement? He is a rhino when it comes to a lot of these things. He's constantly compromising, and in fact, he's just a shill for the Republican establishment. So how do you justify, calling Rand a man of principle when he's supporting these kind of candidates?
Because I'll generalize the answer I just gave. I don't have the information that Rand is using to make the calculations he's making. I am sure that if there was, I'm not sure. I suspect, based on everything that I've seen with Rand, and you have to take the whole package, right, that he is making a strategic calculation with that endorsement. He did with Romney. We can see now he did with Romney. And it's no good at just having principles as statements of principle. Right? Libertarians have been doing that for ages and have got nowhere. It looks to me like Rand is going to play to win. So that means he's got to be in the game. He's got to have enough good cards in the game that he can get to where he needs to actually move the dial towards his principles. The principles that are worth having are the ones that you can that you can make practical change toward. In that game, you have to make some apparent compromises. And I say apparent because if he's making the calculation that endorsement will have will not make a material difference to our liberty in a negative way in the short run, but it's going to enable him to make a material difference to our liberty in the long run, then at a meta level, that is a principled endorsement. Superficially, it doesn't look like one. But that is the game you're in if you're a politician. So if you don't like that game, then you have to say, okay, we should not try and seek liberty at all within the political process. But again, look to history. That's hardly ever worked. I mean, the only places that has ever worked is when we were at violent revolution. And maybe it's going to come to violent revolution in this country. But if there are people like Rand playing those kind of games, and a MASH and whatever, normalizing, making it easier for other politicians in that spirit to work in the way they're working and mainstream these ideas, then I want them to try. Because you have to take, if you ask me about Rand, you have to take him you have to take everything he's done. If you focus on one thing, and you say that's not consistent with a specific thing that I would do based on my understanding of these principles, therefore I am going to deny that he has these principles, then that's not a fair way of judging anyone, and it's necessarily not accurate.
And I can understand with what you're talking about, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of purism in regards to not wanting to work with other people who don't necessarily believe everything that you believe in. I think that is a huge problem within the Libertarian Party is well, I'm more of a libertarian than you are. I believe this and you don't. So now, we're totally at odds and we can't work together. However, when it comes to compromise, all right, there are certain things that I, obviously as principle, you as a matter of principle, you can't compromise on. So I think it's just a balance of what you can, work with, get past the purism of it, find people who are strange bedfellows or people that you may support on just one issue in particular, but while still maintaining your principles and not compromising on it. I'm just concerned that endorsing candidates that stand totally on the opposite end of the spectrum from somebody, from what they say they believe, does in fact cause issues. It creates a rift, and it's my opinion.
I agree. I mean, as you have just stated it, I agree. But for example, we don't know what Rand. This is just hypothetical. We don't know, for example, what Rand might be working on that would make a material change to the liberties of our nation, that he needs Mitch McConnell for, right? So he might be getting some material help for a piece of legislation or to stop a piece of legislation because he's saying something. Now, if that's the cost, then I might not like it, just as I felt physically sick when he supported Romney. But that was the cost. And I think, and I'll tell you, when Rand did the 13-hour filibuster, and I was having lunch in Belgium, and it was making, we were talking about it over lunch as it was going on in Belgium. And for me, that kind of made me feel better about the Romney endorsement because, okay, it's like, well, he got this platform that has allowed him to do this. He's changing the debate. It didn't make me like the Romney endorsement. I can't undo the feeling sick. I campaigned against Romney vociferously on principle. But that doesn't mean that I can therefore say, for example, again, that Rand is not of my principles, or I can't support him on principle because, do you see what I mean? Because his context meant that his principles led him to different specific actions in the situation he found himself in. So as you've said it, I agree, Matt, but I just think, I just want to say, it's never that simple, and you never know the full context that people are working in. So I give everyone, as you can tell from the way I'm answering your question, I tend to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and look at the overall, at the direction he takes us. Because we're never going to get to the same destination. We don't all want exactly the same destination. So we have to look at the broad direction. And that will only make itself clear over time.
And it's one of those things, it's the game of politics too. We don't necessarily see what's going on. We may see a part of the picture, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what people's reasonings for endorsement of candidates are. There may have been some backroom deal, and I agree. I mean, it definitely it could have helped him in spreading the message of liberty and doing what he's trying to do. But my concern is at what cost? Is it going to discourage people from supporting him because they think he's not a man of principle? Is it going to actually create a rift within the liberty movement itself? And purists in the Libertarian Party may feel sick, like you said, and no longer support this candidate. That to me is a big concern, because I personally, the last few people I voted for president, I honestly felt like I was compromising on completely, and I really want a candidate that I don't feel like I'm compromising on. And I'm hoping that Rand Paul could be that guy, but right now, I'm really discouraged with him, and honestly, I'm looking at Gary Johnson. Honestly, I hope he runs.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love Gary Johnson. I've met him. I was proud to endorse him after Ron Paul stepped out, and actually, probably my personal views on a number of issues are closer to Johnson than Ron Paul. And I don't have it officially, but I understand that he is looking to run in 2016. I mean, that's my best information so far. So, but again, then it will be really interesting because then we're going to be in a similar situation, right, where we have a really good libertarian candidate in Gary Johnson, but we have a candidate in the GOP who might practically do more for liberty by virtue of having a mainstream platform, right? So, see, when you talk about like if Rand Paul alienates the purest libertarians, I've actually commented, and if people are interested in this, check out the interview I did with Jeffrey Tucker. I did 2 interviews with Jeffrey Tucker, and we kind of broached this a little bit. That it may be that by alienating the purest libertarians, we actually help Rand Paul. It may be that those who I call them dogmatic libertarians, are actually not libertarian at all by virtue of the fact that they're dogmatic, right? There's this kind of, you have to see liberty in this way. It doesn't mean it's not good enough if you only go kind of towards liberty, you have to go all the way or it doesn't count. These kind of attitudes, I think, actually stop people who might practically be able to mainstream ideas of liberty from being successful. There's a reason why for 40 years there's been a Libertarian Party and they haven't been able to beat 1% of the vote. There's a reason. And that reason is largely to do with this kind of quite narrow libertarian dogmatism, contradiction in terms, although it is. So, again, even this question that you're asking, there's a little more to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, Robin, we got to cut to a quick commercial break. Would you mind sticking with us for a little while longer?
Sure, no worries.
All right, we'll be right back in 2 minutes, everyone. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. If you want to join today's conversation, please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. I'm here with our special guest, Robin Corner of the Blue Republican, and we are talking about the Libertarian Party. When we last left, we were talking about Rand Paul and the importance of sticking to your principles while not being a purist and not willing to talk with other people who don't believe exactly what you believe in. So I want to talk a little bit about your thoughts, Robin, on what the effect of a liberty-oriented candidate in the GOP will do in comparison to having like a good candidate like Gary Johnson in the Libertarian Party in the race for presidency. Do you think it will? Do you think it's a good idea that we have a Rand Paul in the race going up against a Gary Johnson, or would you prefer to see a bad candidate such as Romney or let's say Jeb Bush in the race against him? Do you think that would drive more votes to the Libertarian Party?
I'm not interested in where the votes go. I'm interested in making America pro-liberty and pro-constitution again. So for that reason, and I don't care the vehicle. If it's LP, GOP, monster raving loony party, that's actually a party in England. It doesn't matter. Right? I'm interested in the outcome. I'm interested in the lives of people, because the only thing that matters ultimately is the American people, right, and the liberties that supposedly were enshrined in this Constitution that I have on the wall. So for that reason, my answer is I definitely want a Rand Paul instead of a Romney. Because here's the thing, unless there's massive, massive change in just 2 years, the size of which I mean, on a scale of like, the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, Gary Johnson won't win. So the big game isn't going to be for putting Gary Johnson into the White House. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, right? But I'm just talking about, overwhelming statistical likelihood looking from where we are today. However, if you have Rand Paul defining the Republican Party, i.e. a mainstream label, something that people already accept, he's going to redefine conservatism. He's going to redefine the party. It may not be as much as people like you and I would like, Matt, but, still, it's obviously going to be so different from W. Bush, right? By having at least as many of the libertarian ideas as Rand puts out there, having those as being the opposition to the statist progressive Democratic candidate completely changes the direction of American politics. I mean, remember that political change happens in the culture. The long-term change happens because of the ideas that are mainstreamed. What is being pumped through cable news, radio shows, blah, 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 newspapers every day. That's what changes the political course of a nation in the long run, not who wins this, which candidates are standing this year or next year, right? So absolutely, we should be, this is why I might end up as a practical matter, and again, I'm not making an endorsement, but let's see how things are in 2016. It might be from a making a difference for liberty perspective more exciting to have Rand Paul, whom I might agree with less than I agree with Gary Johnson, because the ideas of Rand Paul will go much more into the mainstream proportionally than will those of Gary Johnson, precisely because the thing is unfair, because people like to stick to the team that they know. If Rand became a nominee, he could give conservatives, as it were, permission to hold libertarian views while still maintaining their identity as conservatives. That will have a huge impact on this nation, the likes of which I think it will be very hard for Gary Johnson to equal by 2016. I will support him if he tries, of course, but it will be just as with a historical perspective, very hard to match that. I think if Rand Paul becomes the GOP nominee, that itself indicates a massive success for liberty. Not because Rand Paul is a panacea, not because he's a libertarian panacea, but because it's so far removed from the direction we have been going in from, to George W. and then Obama. It's clearly a departure from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I always talk about is this concern from people to not vote for the Libertarian Party because they're concerned that it's going to take away a Republican vote. Now, obviously, if that decision is made very easy, if we have the likes of like Jeb Bush running for the candidacy, cool. I'm less concerned about taking away that Republican vote and giving it to a Libertarian candidate such as Gary Johnson. But when it comes to having Rand Paul in there, this is a harder decision. This is something that's hard to decide, and it's something that I'm struggling with on compromising. Is this something that I would be willing to vote for? Would I be willing to vote for Rand Paul? I mean, he has a lot more likelihood of getting elected than Gary Johnson. But here again, we loop back to this thing. We have to be able to believe that our party or the Libertarian Party, if you're not part of it, is capable of success. This kind of success is possible, as long as we get past this belief that we're taking away a Republican vote. The way I've been looking at it is voting for a Republican is in fact taking away a Libertarian vote. So, I mean, I understand where you're from. It's something I'm struggling with, but I'm still trying to figure out what I would do in that scenario.
You know what, Mac? It's early days, and I wouldn't worry about it, because at the end of the day, I don't think we should be voting. I don't think we should be thinking of it in terms of parties, right? If I was rabidly anti-Romney and delighted to support Johnson, but before Johnson, I was supporting Paul. So I went, GOP Libertarian, and I did it based on the people. But the party was just incidental to the people that I was supporting and the impact I thought those people could have for liberty, right? So. And we will be able to make the same assessment. Let's say we get to Rand, you're filling in 2016, and the option is, I don't know, Hillary, Rand, or Johnson. Yes, I know how it would feel to vote for Johnson, but it would feel damn good. But if you honestly thought that you had the chance to put Rand Paul in the White House, to put even someone that we could have a debate about whether he's libertarian in the White House, and know that for 4 years he's going to have the biggest platform in the free world, I think your gut will answer it. And if your gut tells you, no way, I don't believe this Rand Paul, I think he's a shill, whatever, blah, 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 and I don't think there is any evidence for that at this point. But if you think that, then your gut will tell you, vote Johnson. But if and it might be a damn shame to vote, let's say, Rand Paul when Johnson is there, kind of pure in many ways. But, this is life. This is politics. Maggie Thatcher said, politics at its purest is philosophy in action. The point being in action. She didn't say that politics at its purest was philosophy at its purest, right? So, we're going to have a decision. And the decision is always, do we go more in one direction or more in another? The option is never, if I vote for this guy, do I get exactly what I want? So you're always compromising something.
And I agree with that.
As a practical matter.
The problem is, though, in regards to not basing your decision based on the party, if you look at the principles itself, Johnson is obviously the Liberty candidate, but in terms of looking at the party, I mean, you do have to look at what kind of impact the party can have. So, you have more of a likelihood of getting your GOP candidate elected than you do having your Libertarian candidate elected. That's just statistics, as you said. But, you do have to look at the party in some aspects, and I don't, I consider myself a conservative libertarian. I still am very reluctant to say I am just a libertarian. I'm a libertarian, a big L libertarian that has conservative leanings, when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, I look at the principle. And obviously you have to take into account the party. But this has been a good conversation on this. Is there anything else in particular that like some hot button issues that you focus on, or something that's stuck in your craw that you'd like to get off your chest?
Well, different things do that at different times. My archive of work covers many topics that will be of interest to any liberty folks. There's always a lot of big issues out there, and I'm kind of loath to pick one. I've always got things to say about something or other.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about something in particular here, because I'm curious where you stand on. I guess we can talk about Rand Paul again here, because his lawsuit against the NSA and the domestic spying. We're actually going to be talking about something about the spying later in the show, and I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on the blanket spying on every human communication without a warrant? What do you think about this?
Okay, I mean, my views won't be surprising, and I have written, somewhat extensively on this. I think it is abomination against everything that makes America worthwhile and makes America America. I think it is profoundly historically ignorant to throw out all of the principles of liberty that have been carefully and organically, in a sense, developed over 1,000 years to bring us to this point. It's the security-liberty thing. It is always, that's a false dichotomy. I've written about that. We need to be outraged. If we are okay with this, then I believe we're okay with everything. I mean, we're okay with the destruction of our society, and we're okay with the destruction of our liberties. I think it's hard to argue for on either a principle, that this security state, I think is hard to argue for on a principled basis, and it's hard to argue for on a practical one. Just in terms of the math of how much security does this buy us, versus how much liberty do we lose. So if this is one of those issues that I think I'm pretty unequivocal about.
Absolutely, and for me, it's it goes back to what you were saying as far as the Benjamin Franklin quote of those who would sacrifice a little liberty to gain a little security deserve neither and will lose both. That's kind of a mantra that I go by. And my question, when I run across somebody that is in support of these kind of programs, I ask them, when is enough enough? When are we safe enough? And when let's even talk about these checkpoints that go on, the no refusal DUI checkpoints where they take your blood without your permission, and you have no ability whatsoever to say no to that. They do this without probable cause, reasonable suspicion, or a search warrant of any kind. So, my question is...
I would go so far as to say that is evil. I mean, I can't say... I don't have words strong enough. The idea that the state can enter your body without probable cause, I find... if there's no line there, then where the hell is there any line?
Absolutely, yeah. And when is enough enough? If we have a checkpoint at every couple of blocks, a checkpoint every block at the end of your street, or is it enough finally if it's at your door? Every time you leave the house, they're checking you. When is enough enough? When does this omnibus surveillance state, when is it finally enough to make us safe? How many liberties do we have to give up?
Yeah. I mean, you're right, and there's no answer to it, because the premise, as you rightly point out, is abominable.
Exactly. This egregious violation of the Fourth Amendment, it makes me question all the other amendments down the line. Even things that we thought were impossible. Things that we thought that we didn't even need. Like, for example, the Third Amendment, which prevents the government from stationing troops in your home. At some point, are we going to get to this point? If they're just violating the Fourth Amendment so egregiously here, are we going to see a point when we're told that we have no choice but to house soldiers or anybody from the government in our home, where they can do whatever they want? I mean, these are things that we thought we didn't even need in the Constitution anymore at all.
That's right. That's interesting. A very bad way to make any argument is from a lack of imagination. We can't imagine welfare except delivered by the state, because we've never seen anything else, right? We can't imagine the quartering of troops in our houses because we've never seen it. But we need to get our imaginations into gear, because history shows, and of course the founders, the people that wrote those amendments, knew a bit of history. They were students of history, and they knew that history had done dastardly things to people. In history, dastardly things have been done to people that they could not even see coming. Cultures change, quickly, and let's not say quickly, but they get to a point of kind of critical mass. And then there can be quick changes that aren't, that people don't see coming. So, I think it's a very reasonable question. There are good historical reasons why those amendments are as they are, and there are good reasons, both moral and historical, why we need to defend each one.
Absolutely. And in terms of it being done before. It has been done as far as the quartering of troops in America. When the British were here, no offense, Robin, they had stationed their troops in Americans' homes. Those troops were then beating up the people who lived there, spying on them, raping their wives and children. These are things that they actually saw, and that's one of the reasons why it was put there. And to make matters worse, when these Americans complained about it to the superiors in the British military, they just blew it off, and they weren't even concerned with these kind of violations. In fact, it was meant to be a punishment for these people. So that's why it was put there, and that's it's obvious that that was a big concern of our founders to limit the control of government, limit what they can do, and also maximize your privacy, because there's no better way to know everything about what you're doing than to have somebody in your home that's going to narc on you, tattletale on you, basically, and that's a big concern. So I definitely support the Third Amendment, obviously, and I'm scared at what our country is coming to. We are seeing the usurpation of power, and we continue. I don't want to get too tinfoil hat here, but we continue to see the government expanding and trampling all over our constitutional rights, constitutionally protected rights. So anyway, it does concern me. But anyway, Robin, I want to give you an opportunity here to give us a little bit of background on you specifically. I understand that you. Were you born in Europe? Is that, or England? I mean,
I'm from the south of England. Yes.
Okay, and what brought you over here?
Originally, I came chasing a woman, but then that didn't work out. The love affair with a woman didn't work out, but the love affair with America kind of started. And so a few years later, I decided to try to immigrate to the United States. And because I didn't have corporate sponsorship or any family here or the right to asylum, about 6 immigration attorneys told me that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And when lots of people who are supposedly professional tell me I can't do something, then I definitely want to do it. So, I arrived in the U.S. At the end of 2004, and I got my green card nearly 5 years ago, and I look forward to becoming a citizen certainly within half a year.
Absolutely. So how long from start to finish has this process taken?
Well, it was 5 years and 1 day to get the green card. That's the hard bit. Then you just have to wait it out 5 years from getting the green card to becoming a citizen. So I'm nearly at that 5 years now, that second 5 years.
Okay, so it's 10 years basically in 1 day for you to become a citizen.
Yeah. I mean, unless you come in with family, when... It's a little different depending on how you come in. But yeah, basically that's very quick, 10 years.
So what are your thoughts on that process and how long it takes you to do the process legally?
The legal American immigration system, the American immigration system for legal immigrants is inhumane. It is the biggest thing that incentivizes illegal immigration. There were a number of points of the process that were so kind of awful, so disruptive of my life and so anxiety-inducing that there were a number of points where I considered becoming illegal just to make my life easier, to make staying here easier, and to therefore have more chance of becoming a citizen down the line. So that's, in relation to the broader issue of illegal immigration right now, it's a huge issue. That should give Americans pause. It's an interesting question because, of course, it's a huge area of law and policy that Americans don't know because they've never had to experience it because they're American. The people who need to be talking about informing the debate about American immigration to the United States are the legal immigrants because they're the only people that actually know what the system is. And it's if you wanted to design an inhumane, bad system, you'd have trouble coming up with a better one, i.e. a worse one than the current U.S. immigration system.
Well said. You took the thought right out of my head. As far as my thoughts on this, I can get outraged over it, and especially the illegal immigration situation we have at our southern border and elsewhere. But I think, and I've said before, I think that the people that need to speak out about this are the people who have come here legally, lawfully, gone through the process, though it is very long and arduous. And, obviously it's designed to basically discourage people from doing it. So
go ahead.
I think that the people that need to come out and speak out against the illegal immigration are the people who came here legally. Those voices need to be heard. More importantly than anyone else's, those voices need to be heard.
Matt, thanks for saying that. Here's a little fantasy that I have. If I could do anything on Capitol Hill, what I would like to do is be a witness, give testimony to a congressional committee about the immigration system, because I could dispel so many of the lies that are told on all sides of this issue in minutes. And I would make it very clear that from a legal perspective, this is a lot simpler an issue to solve than politicians on all sides would have you believe. And I think now that the politicians want Americans to believe that this is a completely complicated thing to solve because it kind of excuses their incompetence in solving it. I am not the only legal immigrant that I know. I know a few others, and they all feel some version of what I feel. I've written a little bit about this. I could make a few changes to the law that would, I believe, solve a large part of this problem without too much difficulty. But the problem is that the lies that are being, the factual errors that are being promulgated about immigration. Americans they're surprised. The system, you were kind of right when you said the system's designed to discourage people, but it's only designed to discourage those who would come to work or start a business. Only 9% of all legal immigrants to the United States are here for reasons positive economic reasons, starting a business or working as an employee, perhaps in a company corporation. 91% are here because they already have family or they're here under asylum. So, of course, when you do the math on that, it's not surprising that, just as an example, this isn't to pick on one nationality, but, whatever, 2/3 of all legal Mexican immigrants were originally here illegally. So, if you're Mexican, you know that the best way to get in legally is to enter illegally, just a statistical fact. Now, what it is in the law that causes that to happen is not complicated to see or to change. So, these are the kind of the basic facts that whichever side of this you're on need to be grappled with. And, of course, people who've been through it have a reason to know those facts. There's, as I say, in one hand, in a sense, there's a lot to it, but in another sense, it ain't as complicated as many of the political class would have Americans believe.
Absolutely, yeah, and in my opinion, I think that's kind of a fog of war to keep us divided on the issue, make us think it's more complicated, and make it increase the paradigms, us versus them, old versus young, white versus black. Christian versus whatever, non-religious, these are benefits to our political class, the elites out there, to keep us divided on the issue. And I think it's important that we all unify and try to come up with a better way, a better system to get people in this country that want to be here and will actually benefit us in terms of creating jobs, becoming entrepreneurs, starting their own businesses. And working in a way that that they're not going to be a burden to us as far as jumping on the welfare state. I think that these issues are not as complicated, and to me it's just ridiculous. 10 years and 1 day to become a citizen, that is discouraging. Anybody would be discouraged by that. There has to be a better way. There has to be a way to streamline the process, and honestly, it doesn't seem that complicated. You can do a background check on somebody in the NICS system almost instantly. They claim it's instant, but you can background check people almost instantly, and from there you can expand on that and go further. But even when I was in the military, I believe a top secret clearance only takes a couple of months. So how difficult is this process? To me, it just seems a little bit ridiculous that it's 10 years. That's just ridiculous. So I want to give you...
and I came with, for what it's worth, not to blow my own trumpet, but I did come with 3 degrees from one of the best universities in Europe, and money that I brought in to begin a business that was the value of a house in England. I sold a house in England and I moved it into a business account here. So and then at some expense, 5 years later, when the green card was kind of ready, I had to show that I wouldn't be a burden on the welfare state. So I actually had to, at my expense, prove that I wouldn't be a burden on the welfare state. So obviously that also puts some of what's going on now into, I hope, some kind of context.
Absolutely, and you know, I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, but to make it.
Oh, sure. I don't know why. It's a good idea.
Yeah, to make it be something that lasts that long, I think it's out of line, and I definitely understand why somebody would be discouraged from it. I would be discouraged from it if I was doing it as well. So it just makes sense. But I want to give you an opportunity one more time because we're running out of time here. I want to give you one more chance to say everything you guys got going on, plug your show a little bit, and give our listeners an opportunity to find out where they can hear more from you.
Okay, so my show runs at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, and then repeated Sunday. So one just came out a few hours ago. It's called Blue Republican with Robin Kerner. It's been on Daily Pool Radio. It's moving over to truthbetoldmedia.com. Check me out there. All of my writing, I've got quite an extensive archive on a number of issues pertaining to American politics, is on Huffington Post. Just search for Robin Kerner, Koerner. The Blue Republican Facebook group is awesome. It's very active. It is not your normal libertarian kind of group. It's 15,000 people there. It's very welcoming, as I say, non-dogmatic. I kind of joke that it's for the liberty curious. So check that out. And bluerepublican.org is being rebuilt. So it's not much to look at right now. I mean, you can visit it, but bluerepublican.org is to become kind of the hub for the organization that we're building with state chapters all over the country. And I invite any of your listeners, if they're kind of interested in in liberty with a sales and marketing bent, right, with a focus on actually changing the mainstream of American politics towards liberty and the Constitution, consider starting up a chapter in your county or city or state. Get in touch with me through bluerepublican.org. I really want to expand this. And there are already some fantastic people who've been supporting me in doing that, and the more the merrier, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and Twitter. I guess I'm on Twitter. Kerner, Koerner.
Well, I sure do appreciate you coming on the show, Robin, and it was an absolute honor to have you on. If you guys have anything going on that you want to let my listeners know about, feel free to message me, and I'll get the word out about your stuff that you are involved with over there. And again, I really do appreciate you coming on the show.
You got it. And you know what? Last weekend in Spokane, Washington, there's going to be a great show, Liberty Fusion, a great show for libertarians in Washington. And then in Minnesota the following weekend, 7th of September, I'm going to be in Minnesota discussing the Constitution with some other fine speakers.
All righty. Well, thanks again, Robin, and good luck with everything you got going on.
Thanks for the time, Mac. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. All right. That was Robin Kerner, everyone, with the Blue Republican. Make sure you check him out, and we're going to cut to a commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to start the next segment of the show that we like to call Ask Mac. Don't go anywhere.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. So this is the show that attempts to inspire you all to stand up for your rights. And if you want to join the conversation, give us a call. The number of the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. We are entering the next segment of the show, and we like to call it the Ask Mack segment.
It's time to ask Mack. You've got a question? He's got the answer. Time to ask Mack. When you got a question, time to ask Mack.
All right, this is a segment of the show where I give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. Anything you would like me to answer on the air, you can ask it in several ways. Of course, you can give us a call live here, and we'll have a discussion about it. You can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can post your questions at facebook.com/onthemoveshow, or you can tweet us at onthemoveshow. Just make sure that you include the hashtag AskMack so I can find it. And if you do that, I will try to answer your questions live on the air to the best of my ability. We have a individual from Facebook. His name is Clint. He asked me to discuss the conflict between Hamas and Israel. And as you all may know, we have discussed this in the past, and I'm more than happy to do it again. I think it's very, very important that we fully understand this Middle East conflict, and I think that we all need to be paying attention to it. It's very, very important. Anyway, we found a video on YouTube. The YouTube channel is Prager University, and it describes the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, I think, perfectly. And it's being called the most important video about Israel ever made. And here it is.
When I did my graduate studies at the Middle East Institute at Columbia University's School of International Affairs, I took many courses on the question of the Middle East conflict. Semester after semester, we studied the Middle East conflict as if it was the most complex conflict in the world, when in fact, it is probably the easiest conflict in the world to explain. It may be the hardest to solve, but it is the easiest to explain. In a nutshell, it's this. One side wants the other side dead. Israel wants to exist as a Jewish state and to live in peace. Israel also recognizes the right of Palestinians to have their own state and to live in peace. The problem, however, is that most Palestinians and many other Muslims and Arabs do not recognize the right of the Jewish state of Israel to exist. This has been true since 1947, when the United Nations voted to divide the land called Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews accepted the United Nations partition, but no Arab or any other Muslim country accepted it. When British rule ended on May 15, 1948, the armies of all the neighboring Arab states, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Transjordan, and Egypt, attacked the one-day-old state of Israel in order to destroy it. But to the world's surprise, the little Jewish state survived. Then it happened again. In 1967, the dictator of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, announced his plan, in his words, to destroy Israel. He placed Egyptian troops on Israel's border, and armies of surrounding Arab countries were also mobilized to attack. However, Israel preemptively attacked Egypt and Syria. Israel did not attack Jordan and begged Jordan's king not to join the war. But he did. And only because of that did Israel take control of Jordanian land, specifically the West Bank of the Jordan River. Shortly after the war, the Arab states went to Khartoum, Sudan, and announced their famous 3 no's. No recognition, no peace, and no negotiations. What was Israel supposed to do? Well, one thing Israel did a little more than a decade later in 1978 was to give the entire Sinai Peninsula an area of land bigger than Israel itself and with oil, back to Egypt because Egypt, under new leadership, signed a peace agreement with Israel. So Israel gave land for the promise of peace with Egypt, and it has always been willing to do the same thing with the Palestinians. All the Palestinians have ever had to do is recognize Israel as a Jewish state and promise to live in peace with it. But when Israel has proposed trading land for peace, as it did in 2000, when it agreed to give the Palestinians a sovereign state in more than 95% of the West Bank and all of Gaza, the Palestinian leadership rejected the offer and instead responded by sending waves of suicide terrorists into Israel. Meanwhile, Palestinian radio, television, and school curricula remain filled with glorification of terrorists, demonization of Jews, and the daily repeated message that Israel should cease to exist. So it's not hard to explain the Middle East dispute. One side wants the other dead. The motto of Hamas, the Palestinian rulers of Gaza, is, "We love death as much as the Jews love life." There are 22 Arab states in the world, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. There is one Jewish state in the world, and it is about the size of New Jersey. In fact, tiny El Salvador is larger than Israel. Finally, think about these two questions. If tomorrow Israel laid down its arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? And if the Arab countries around Israel laid down their arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? In the first case, there would be an immediate destruction of the state of Israel and mass murder of its Jewish population. In the second case, there would be peace the next day. As I said at the outset, it is a simple problem to describe. One side wants the other dead. And if it didn't, there would be peace. Please remember this. There has never been a state in the geographic area known as Palestine that was not Jewish. Israel is the third Jewish state to exist in that area. There was never an Arab state, never a Palestinian state, never a Muslim or any other state. That's the issue. Why can't the one Jewish state the size of El Salvador be allowed to exist? That is the Middle East problem. I'm Dennis Prager.
I think that video really sums it up in a nutshell. To me, this is a big dynamical difference between the philosophy of Israel and Hamas. Israel, for example, they use their military to protect their civilians, and it's the exact opposite, the antithesis of that Hamas does. Hamas will use their civilians to protect their military, and we see this with them hiding behind civilians in hospitals, apartment complexes, and schools. Hamas will use civilians to protect their military, and this is the exact opposite of what we see with the Israeli military. This is something that I find very, very disturbing, and I believe this video is correct. That, I mean, the bottom line is that the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, it's very, very simple to understand. In Hamas's charter, and I know I've said this before, Hamas says in their charter, this is the document that founded Hamas, that the day of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the Jews. When the Jew will hide behind stones and trees, the stones and trees will say, "O Muslim, O Abdullah, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him." Only the Garkad tree would not do that because it is one of those trees of the Jews. These people do not wish to live in peace. These people want to exterminate the Jewish people. And let's also point out the fact that Hamas is a known terrorist organization, as designated by the U.S. government. So anyone supporting Hamas is, in fact, supporting a terrorist organization. This situation is so simple to understand, but it's impossible for anyone other than the Palestinians to fix. Until they stop cultivating a society of hatred towards Jews through their propaganda and their indoctrination of their children And even within the religious terms of Islam, where they're promised that martyrs will be rewarded with virgins when they die as a martyr, this kind of mentality of teaching children that it's better to kill a Jew than to live. I mean, this kind of mentality is why this situation will not be fixed. Until they stop the suicide bombing, the kidnapping of Israelis, and indiscriminately mortaring Israel, there will be no peace. Peace talks will continue to fall apart because how can you negotiate with someone who refuses to acknowledge your right to exist? Not only as a sovereign nation, but just the mere existence on this earth. Your mere ability to live is an affront to them. Israel has an absolute right to defend themselves. And it's unfortunate that Hamas has chosen to hide behind women and children. But when Palestinian civilians are killed in this process, the blame lies solely on Hamas, not Israel. Do Israel's critics expect them to do? How many thousands of mortars are they expected to absorb before they take action, before they try to eliminate the threat? No country in the world would show this kind of restraint that Israel has showed during this conflict. And if Israel wanted to exterminate Palestinians in Gaza, they have the means. They could totally wipe them off the map. It wouldn't take much considering how densely packed the population is inside Gaza. But no, Israel hasn't done that. Well, why not? Why wouldn't Israel do that? If they're as evil as the Palestinians claim they are, why wouldn't Israel totally wipe them off the map? I mean, they have the third largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. They have easily the means of wiping out all of their enemies. So why aren't they doing that? The answer is simple. They want to live in peace, and they are not willing to exterminate a population of people. They don't want that. They would love to live in peace with their neighbors. And in fact, they've promised to give land and to actually not have any kind of war on Israel or on the Palestinian nations, the Arab nations surrounding them, if only they will recognize them as a state and quit attacking them. How complicated is that? Do you really think that these surrounding countries would show the same kind of restraint? What if Hamas had the means to totally exterminate all Jews in Israel? Do you think that they would actually not do that? Absolutely not. The bottom line is if you support Hamas, you are supporting extremist jihad terrorists who want nothing more than to exterminate an entire country and its people. I stand with Israel, and I hope you do too. Anyway, we're moving on. I really want to thank Clint for joining the conversation and for getting on the move. Again, if you want to ask your question, if you'd like to ask it on the air, you can ask it in several ways. You can give us a call, 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. You can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can post your questions at facebook.com/onthemoveshow, or you can tweet them at onthemoveshow on Twitter. Make sure that you include your hashtag AskMack so I can find it. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and cut to the next segment of the show, and we like to call it Ask Mack.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
Okay, that was a little bit of a gaffe. This is not Ask Mack. This is the Mack Attack. I apologize. Anyway, this is the segment where I give you my take on outrageous events in the news. If you'd like to join the conversation, again, that number is 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. And I will give you your ability to have your 2 cents on it. We'll have a conversation. Anything that you would like to discuss is on the table as usual. Okay, so I want to talk about Facebook. Today, it's something that weighs heavily on my mind. And as many of you know, or you may know, Facebook has made some recent changes that force its mobile users to download the Facebook Messenger application on their smartphones in order to view and respond to their messages. This application has had over 1 billion downloads since it became mandatory for messaging. But privacy advocates are now speaking out about the Orwellian nature of this application's terms of services. In an article on HuffingtonPost.com written by Sam Fiorella, he discussed the mandatory permissions in this application and what it requires. This application allows the application to change the state of your network connectivity. It allows the app to call numbers without your intervention. This may result in unexpected charges or calls. It also could result in malicious applications costing you money by making calls without your confirmation. It also allows the app to send SMS messages, so we're talking about text messages. This may result in unexpected charges again, and again, malicious applications can use this and send messages without your confirmation, which could again cost you money. It also allows the application to record audio with the microphone. This permission allows the app to record audio at any time without your confirmation. How scary is that? It also allows the application to take pictures and videos with the camera. This permission allows the app to use the camera at any time without your confirmation. Again, that is really scary. I mean, how scary is it that somebody can just turn on your camera on your phone and see inside your home, into your private life? Anyway, it also allows the application to read your phone's call log, including data about incoming calls. The permission allows them to save your call log, and malicious applications may share call log data without your knowledge. Wow. It just keeps getting worse, and there's more here. It allows the app to read data about your contacts stored on your phone, including the frequency with which you've called, emailed, or communicated in other ways with specific individuals. It allows the app to read personal profile information stored on your device, such as your name and contact information. This means the app can identify you and may send your profile information to others. And again, with malicious applications, that could happen over and over. And that's pretty scary. I mean, we have spyware out there now that is incredibly invasive. This could be used to manipulate this program. It also allows the application to access phone features of the device. This permission allows the app to determine the phone number and device IDs, whether a call is active, and the remote number contacted by a call. It also allows the app to get a list of accounts known by the phone. This may include any accounts created by applications you have installed. So Facebook came out and they spoke about this. Facebook wrote in a Help Center article designed to address what it calls misinformation on this topic. Facebook says much of the problem is due to Android's rigid policy on permissions. Facebook doesn't get to write its own and instead must use generic language provided to them by Android. The language and permissions doesn't necessarily reflect the way the Messenger app and other apps use them. All right, I really don't care what Facebook has to say about this. I am very concerned at this kind of ability to just waive all of our rights. This company, this entity, can now just access anything they want, and you're giving them permission to do it. We all know, as I previously discussed, that the NSA is already spying on every single human electronic communication without warrants. So this kind of stuff from Facebook, it shouldn't bother us, right? Wrong. I know that the NSA works very closely with social media companies, and in fact, by law, some of these are required to cooperate with them, and they can't even speak out about it. These are laws that are passed through things like the Patriot Act, and these are very concerning. We've heard how Verizon has been forced to give up the metadata from its millions of customers, and this is something that we need to be concerned about. The ability for the NSA, to just have a backdoor into your private life. They can, legally force this company, Facebook, to hand over control of this, and the NSA can just look into your life. Even though the NSA probably has other ways to spy on us, and, I don't plan on making their job any easier. So I have actually uninstalled the Facebook Messenger program, and I don't care what Facebook says. I don't trust them with this kind of access into my life. Whether or not the NSA is involved, I don't trust anyone to have open access into my private life and expect them not to use it, to one day violate my rights with their newfound power. And if they did decide to start spying on us inside of our homes and using that information to somehow make money by selling it to companies, they didn't even violate the law. You gave them permission. That's what you did when you accepted the terms of service. You probably didn't read it. I know many people didn't, including myself. You know, I initially installed this application without even reading it or thinking twice about it because I wanted the convenience of accessing my messages on Facebook while I'm not around my PC. But it's something that we need to think about. Are we willing to sacrifice our privacy for the convenience of being able to Facebook while we're on the move, to contact people with messages? I am not, and I'm curious what you guys have to say about it. Anyway, at this point, we have a caller on the line that wants to discuss the Middle East crisis. It's his name is John. Hey, John, are you on the line?
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to give a question. The last thing I just heard was that iMessenger, that they had originally said that the software was on. From the Facebook app. I think that's. I think it's an invasion of privacy, and I think that they've been doing it a long time. It's just kind of like, if you remember Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, when they were signing the dotted line before they went into the factory, and the more they read, the smaller the writing got. It's kind of like that. They just shoved it in there into
Absolutely.
a small confined space.
And we know that people don't read these things. I think I was reading a study that was conducted that it would take the average American to about 250 hours per year to read all the terms of services that they have to agree with throughout that year. 250 hours. You know, most Americans and most people for that matter just don't read this stuff. It's and even when they do, some of it is legal mumbo jumbo and they can't understand it. So you originally called in and you want to discuss the Middle East crisis. So what's on your mind in regards to that?
I think that what's interesting, and by the way, I just read an article on Yahoo about Steven Seagal showed up at a concert with Vladimir Putin. I found that interesting. I think what's happening in the Middle East is a lack of foreign policy and this straight up do nothing from the Obama administration when they saw this coming. It shows you the lack of their leadership and their credibility. And I think him going to Martha's Vineyard and then going on a fundraiser on Monday, that just shows you how much he cares there.
Absolutely.
Let's drop 2 bombs. What type of person drops 2 bombs and they send them humanitarian aid, which we don't even know how much they got, and then scoots right off to Martha's Vineyard. And then right after they dropped it, of course, the ISIS went right up the hill and they grabbed hundreds of women that were stranded on that mountain. And
exactly.
It's disgusting. And you look at what's happening with these children, and I don't understand why every Christian pastor in our country isn't in front of the White House up in arms. And I've actually been telling them that the Christians being killed in these countries is ridiculous. And now look at this. You had Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say, if you were, this is all going somewhere, if you had 3,500 missiles coming to your country, wouldn't you defend yourself? And we have to ask ourselves, are we going to let this brush fire continue to grow, or are we going to put it out? And the answer is they're refusing to act, because this liberalism mental disorder is proof of that. Even Dianne Feinstein of of California even came out and said Friday, she even came out and said, of all people, because I believe she's chairman of the Intelligence Committee, if I'm not mistaken, she even said that the Islamic State is out of control, and if nothing's done, then it is going to blow up, and it's blowing up. They're spreading into Europe. There's thousands of people marching in Paris and London, Berlin, Amsterdam, thousands of people saying death to Jews and Christians. I mean, the Muslims have been getting into those countries, but a lot of them have had enough of that, so they want their borders closed. And so if you look at, my point is if you look at everything that is currently happening, you will see that the reason nothing is being done with regards to Russia and the Ukraine and with regards to the military is because, and you have a president that is against Israel, pretty much. The reason is because, first off, Obama doesn't care. He could care less. Second of all, Joe Biden's son sits on one of the largest oil company boards in the Ukraine. That's why you see nothing happening there. And the West and the United States, in my belief, want the Ukraine because of its large amounts of shale that it has in the north. That's why they really want it.
Absolutely.
To be honest.
Yeah. And
then you have.
And thanks so much,
Go ahead.
John. We got a lot of show here to cover here. We got a lot more other topics I want to get to. And unfortunately, man, we gotta move forward here. I want to touch on what you were talking about though, just very quickly before we move to the next topic. In regards to why we don't see churches speaking out against this administration. You know, the IRS has already said, and this is their charitable organization tax code, the 501c3s out there. The IRS is targeting right now, I believe it's like 98 different churches for their political speech. And this is the exact antithesis of what the First Amendment gives us. It provides us the ability of free speech. But the tax code, these people are not supposed to speak out about politics. So that may be why you're seeing a real problem with these churches not speaking out against this kind of this apathy from this president. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that this President Obama, he does not care, and it's proof when he goes on these fundraisers or he goes on his vacations to Martha's Vineyard while these crises are happening. You know, the world can wait. He doesn't care as far as he's concerned, and I think that's very telling, and I think it's something that we need to pay attention to. But anyway, we have to move on to the next conversation here. Our next topic I wanted to cover here is the corporate loyalty oaths that were written up in an article by Jonathan Alter on thedailybeast.com. And this is really upsetting to me. I mean, I hope you all feel the same way. He's making the case that the United States needs corporations to sign loyalty oaths to stay within the United States. He writes, and I'll read a big chunk here of this article. I'll try to plow through it as quick as I can. On top of all the wars and the global messiness, 2014 will be remembered for the plague of corporate inversion, which the news media should start routinely calling corporate desertion. So far, 47 American-based companies have renounced U.S. citizen and bought foreign subsidiaries in order to dodge American taxes. Many more are preparing to flee. This past month, Heather Brecht, the CEO of Mylan, a Pittsburgh-based generic drug maker, announced that the company is on paper becoming Dutch. Mylan is now just another unpatriotic firm like Walgreens, Medtronic, and Chiquita, the banana company. But a difference. Brecht's father happens to be Senator Joe Manchin, a West Virginia Democrat. Manchin claimed implausibly that he knew nothing in advance. When pressed, he announced that he backs legislation making his daughter's decision illegal. Illegal? That bill, sponsored by Senator Carl Levin in the Senate and by his brother, Representative Sander Levin, in the House, recently won the backing of the President Obama, who made a speech in Los Angeles blasting these companies as corporate deserters. Of course, the president's support means that all Republicans must now oppose it. So it's time for red-blooded Americans to take matters in their own hands, that he writes here. His answer, and this is him saying it, is to make every corporation sign something. Sign what? If Republicans cared about the issue, which most don't, they would revive McCarthy-era loyalty oaths, where people were forced to swear they weren't communists. Remembering those dark days, Democrats don't like oaths or even pledges, which have proven enormously effective. Grover Norquist's ability to get nearly every Republican in Congress to sign a no new tax pledge is one of the most successful political gambits of recent decades, and a big reason for today's gridlock. Both oaths and pledges are a little creepy. This effort needs something else, something that comes out of a legal and business world, a contract. More specifically, an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. And they are common in corporate America, where tens of thousands of senior managers and employees sign contracts promising to keep all sorts of information confidential. It's often a condition of employment. Now it's time to change the D and expect the same from boards of directors. To expect the same from board of directors. A non-desertion agreement with everyone's John Hancock of every board member and CEO in the United States. Now, this is me talking. This is a tactic that the left uses, where they like to change the names of things in order to get support for it. This is the Saul Alinsky tactic of the ends justify the means. He goes on to say, if boards thought for even a second about long-term interest of their companies, they would summon their lawyers and sign. It's protection against the risk of resurgent nationalism that could strip them of many advantages, including indirect government subsidies, easy access to the American markets that they currently enjoy. For those companies less able to act as Americans, and this is what he's saying, is that if you can't do this, you will not be able to act as an American or recognize their real interest. There are two ways to make this work. The president should issue an executive order that says any company that wants to keep its federal contracts must sign a newfangled NDA. It's reasonable to expect most federal contractors to be American companies. Obama has already used that leverage to raise minimum wage for companies doing business with the government, and a little-noticed move to force the government contractors to pay their suppliers on time. This executive order would get the attention of major corporations, most of which receive federal contracts. Mylan and Medtronic, for example, are deserting even as they receive hundreds of millions in taxpayer money through Medicare and Medicaid. But other companies with few or no federal contracts might be tempted to desert anyway. That's where the rest of us come in. Under my scheme, and yes, he refers to it as a scheme, a plot. You can see him wringing his hands in the shadows about this. Under his scheme, companies that sign non-desertion agreements would embed a tiny American flag or some other good housekeeping type seal in their corporate insignia for us all to see, just as companies during the Great Depression that agreed to Franklin Roosevelt's recovery plan hung an emblem of a blue eagle in their window with the legend, "We do our part." Companies that fail to sign non-desertion agreements would face the kind of public shame that has gone out of fashion, but could come back with a vengeance. Boycotts, petitions, angry shareholder meetings full of the language of patriotism. Now, this sounds more like nationalism to me. That's just me. And I'm a little bit disturbed about this. Are we seriously talking about this? The author already admitted that the days of McCarthyism were dark. Do we really want to return to that? And is this little emblem that he wants the good American companies to put on their packaging, to me, it's very reminiscent of Jews having to wear the Star of David on their shirts, not to mention the additional cost of adding that label to their packaging. Costs like this don't hurt mega corporations. They actually help them by adding cost to their smaller competitors, many of which cannot afford more costs. Many companies these days are already operating under razor-thin margins, which are made worse due to the excessive taxation that we have in this country. Even the author of this article admits that we have too many taxes in this country. He says most members of Congress are in favor of lower corporate tax to make American businesses more competitive abroad. And they're right. A 35% tax rate is too high. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is changing. We used to be the country that everyone wanted to move to. Everyone looked at America as a beacon of freedom. People made the arduous trip to come to America and enjoy our freedoms. And as we spoke about with Robin Kerner, you know, it's a very difficult process nowadays to become an American citizen. 10 years and 1 day at minimum. Now we're actually talking about preventing people from leaving. What kind of freedom is that? Obviously, every person has the right to renounce their citizenship, and now we're talking about making that illegal? This to me sounds more like the Berlin Wall keeping East Germans in. When countries start to prevent their people from leaving, that country is in serious trouble. Wake up, America. Our country is swirling around the drain right now. We are in real trouble. We are so close to the point of no return. We're at the brink right now. We need to remember what we were founded on. The ideal of individualism, not collectivism. America was founded on the ideal that individuals' rights were more important than the collective. The collective cannot take away your rights simply because they have the majority or because it benefits them, even though it necessarily harms you. But we've gotten so far off course now. We need to take a hard look at where we are right now. And it's up to each and every one of us to bring it back. Anyway, I have another topic that I want to get to really quick. We're not going to be able to get to some of the other stuff like the listener challenge and the weekly defender. I don't think we're going to have time to get to it. But I want to talk about a video that was recently leaked about a New Jersey cop who was caught on camera saying that since Obama doesn't follow the Constitution, that the police don't either. They don't have to either. Here he is.
I disagree. You could disagree all you want. I'm here to protect these people here. And they called me off the road because they were alarmed that you were taking photographs.
Well, it's funny you say alarmed because that's the same terminology that they used. Can you hold this? Yeah. It's the same terminology that they used the other day to kick me out of another public building. Okay. Under New Jersey law, with the alarming and all that, I don't fall under alarm because I'm in a public building recording, which is my first and second.
You know what? I don't even care about that because Obama has decimated the friggin' Constitution. So I don't give a damn because if he doesn't follow the Constitution, we don't have to.
It's New Jersey case law. Yes, you don't have. Did you get that?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to follow the Constitution.
Because our president decimated our Constitution. We don't have to.
That's the law of the land. You have to follow it, whether he does or not.
And you tell him that.
This is going on YouTube, just to let you know.
Our country is sick. We have an illness. And the illness is statism. The illness is collectivism, progressivism. Our country is sick. We need to be the medicine. We need to be the answer. We need to teach our kids. We need to get involved at the local and national level. And we all need to pay attention to what's going on because I'm afraid. I'm really afraid for our country right now, people. This is coming from an officer that's sworn to uphold the law, and the law of the land is the Constitution. And he's saying that because Obama doesn't follow it, he doesn't have to either. And he doesn't give a damn, apparently. This is a person who swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. I'm sickened by this. Anyway, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. I want to thank you, our listeners and members of the Mack Pack, for tuning in week after week. I also want to thank our special guest, Robin Kerner, for joining us today. Make sure you check out his show, The Blue Republican. You can also find more information about our show by going to our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.
We're Oscar Mike.